because we gotta get through all this paint stuff, I know, but it'll help you guys for basic art if you keep taking painting 1 or painting 2. So the goal of today is to tell you all the different types of mediums you can do in painting, the types of canvases or papers you can paint on, and then how to actually paint a painting, get your ideas, inspiration, and how this is going to work. So I know I'm jam-packing it all into one quick 30 minutes. So if you have questions, ask questions. If you want the handout, I have the handout. It's just easier for me to visually show you, I think, rather than for you guys to read something and not pay attention to what I'm saying because you're trying to follow along in a reading. So if you want the reading, I can give that to you guys, but I'm just going to go for it. So, with painting, in basic art, you're going to just use acrylic paints. But you have to know there's lots of different mediums out there of paints, okay? So, when you're in elementary school, what you use, like the cheaper version of acrylic paints is tempera paint. So like in elementary school, sometimes middle school, they'll use acrylic paint, but it's tempera paint, okay? It's a lot cheaper. You can tell it's cheaper just because of how it paints and the quality, okay? So you have tempera paint, then you have acrylic paint. Acrylic paint dries really fast. It's a matte finish, okay? So with acrylic paints, you're not going to get as vibrant as a color as you make with oil paints. Oil paints are like the next step up. What oil paints do is they take anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks to dry, and then they honestly take almost 6 months to completely dry out, like 3 to 6 months. Because what happens is they are oils. You know, it's not a water-based, it's more of an oil-based paint. So on that surface, the oil paint might look finished and dry, but if you actually like poked into it or went to the other layers behind it, those layers of oils are still wet, okay? In painting 2, you have the opportunity to do oil paints. We don't do it in painting 1 just because it takes a lot longer and a lot more skill level to do an oil painting. And then the last type of paint is watercolor paint. Watercolors are that nice, softer looking, they don't get as thick, like it is watercolor. So it's a lot thinner base paint, and I'll show you examples in a bit, okay? So those are your main different paints. You got tempera, then acrylic, then oil, and then watercolors, okay? Now if you go into an art museum, here's a little bit of history about how paints are made or pigments are made, okay? Has anyone seen the movie Girl with the Pearl Earring? No? Okay. Maybe I could actually pull out this clip, but what this girl's doing is her job, she got paid to sit and mix paints. Do you guys remember about lead poisoning out of paints? It's that same kind of idea. Lead was put into paints in order to help them bind together, okay? Because when you're mixing a paint, you're using lots of different chemicals, minerals, and different things in order to make a color, okay? So way back in the day when they first started doing paintings, you pretty much had to, how they made red paint was they had to actually go find the red mineral that would give them that color that they wanted. So in the movie, it shows the girl like taking and crushing the different minerals and the different minerals together, and then she was putting the binding agent into it, like the gum acrylic or whatever they were using to actually make the color paint. And that's how paint was made. That's why people used to get sick because of the stuff actually in paints. Now we live in a day and age that I say, hey, I want red paint, I go to the store and buy it. So it's a lot simpler now. It's more manufactured. That's why it's cheaper too. I don't even honestly know if you can get some of the colors anymore, if those minerals are still around, or how expensive that would be to actually get some of those older. Like if you go into a museum, you see that huge painting from like 1600 something. I don't even know if they could truly make those colors anymore. You can get something close, but to actually really, when they do restoration, I don't know if you could really get all those colors. You'll notice too in a museum, most of them are oil paints, just because that's considered more the mastery level, because oil paints are more difficult to use. I've only done maybe 4 oil paintings in my lifetime. I just like acrylics. I don't have the patience to wait for something to dry. In my mind, it's easier to paint with acrylics versus oils, because oils, like in this painting that Julia did, oils, like this black oil, can't ever be covered up with a lighter color. So you have to plan out your light and dark areas a lot more when you do oil paintings. Acrylic, I could let this dry and then paint over it with white, and you won't see the black. So that's really another big difference between oils and acrylics. Paints too, not to get into a ton of history, but like they used to use egg whites to help their, I think it was frescoes, I'd have to do a little more research, it's Monday, but fresco painting, you go in and you see something that says it's fresco. I'm pretty sure that was egg shells and egg whites that they combined in order to make the painting, the binding agent, I guess, the thing that holds all the things together. That's why they use lead. Lead was that binding agent. Now they're way safer. Even oil paints, you can get water-based oils. So, because oil paints you have to clean with something, like, you know, oil, water don't mix, okay, right? So it's that same idea when you're painting with them, you have to get stuff that will actually clean out the oils. But now they have water-based oils, which people argue if water-based are as good as the oil-based ones. So that's your basic overview of the different mediums. Now I'm going to actually show you what they look like. So I said I would bring in my painting I did when I was a freshman in high school, so I remembered it. This is why I'm a big person on put the date on there, because I remember as a freshman in high school, but I didn't remember as 1997. I know I'm dating myself, but that's when I painted this. You guys were born, maybe you were 2 or 3 at that time, but I painted this in 1997. I didn't know what I was doing. I loved art. I was basically in the art room all the time as much as I could be, but wasn't so much as I would want to be. But, because I was taking all the AP classes, so I didn't get as much art as I wanted. But I found this picture in National Geographic, and I was like, oh, that'd be really cool because I love lions and cats. So, with that being said, when you guys are coming up with your concept, okay, now if I was to take this and sell it for $1,000, that's not right, okay? But unless you go to the zoo in Wisconsin, you don't really have access to pictures of lions. Okay, so, like I said, this is a basic art class. I want you guys to paint something you're going to want. Obviously, a landscape, you guys can take pictures of landscapes. So with that being said, some of the stuff you might be able to come up with your own, based off your own photographs, but some you might have to rely on the internet for. And because I'm not selling this for $1,000, it's okay. But if you keep taking art classes, realize you're going to have to get a lot of your own reference pictures that are your own pictures, because it becomes a big deal. It's kind of like you can't copy an English paper. You know, it's that same idea with art. You can't just go copy, like Malik takes 1,000 photos, and I, as an artist, I take all of his photos and paint them and then sell them for $1,000. Unless I'm giving him money, that's not right. So it's that whole issue of copyright and everything does apply to art. So all I did, this is the biggest painting you can do. It's 18 by 24. I had to think about this too, so I did the whole back. I did everything black, and then I painted on top of the black. I didn't try to paint black around all the fur and stuff because that just won't work. Okay, so you kind of think about. We'll talk about blocking and colors, but I didn't know what I was doing. I just picked up paints and started painting. I actually got into a big argument because I was in 4-H. I took this to the fair. And the judge was yelling at me, saying it was oils, and I had no idea what oil paints were. I'm like, it was like in the tube paints, and I'm like, all I did was paint it. And so here this older lady's yelling at me. I'm like, it's acrylics. It can't be acrylics. It can't blend like that. So I baked. That's why I guess I like acrylics, because and I think you guys can do it too. You can blend pretty well with acrylics if you give it a try and you work hard. The thing with paintings too is this doesn't have a protective seal on it. After 6 months to a year after you do a painting, I should have actually taken a sealer. You know, like you seal like wood after it's stained, you put that sealer on. It's the same kind of idea with the painting. I could go back and seal these, so that way they'll last longer. I've never sealed any of my paintings, which is probably something I should do. So just to know, yes, you can put a coat over them, but you have to wait until amount of time. Because what will happen too is, you know how cement expands and contracts when it gets hot and cold? That'll happen to canvas too. So that's why these stretcher bars have a gap right here, because they have to be able to expand and contract. Because if they stay contracted and they're trying to expand, it'll start to crack everything on your canvas because it's breathable, you know, like it moves, it's cloth. Okay, so that's an acrylic painting. Here's a basic art acrylic painting that one of the Wedviks did her freshman year. If you were to do something like this now, you'd have to take it home because there's no way you're going to get it done in 3 weeks. But what, I can't remember, I think Bethany did it. took a picture, went on to Photoshop, changed the color scheme, because it was her and her sister, Katie. And so she actually went on, changed the whole color scheme, because honestly, you guys, you're not going to want to paint something realistic when it comes to people right now, because I've been working on my grandparents maybe 8 hours total, and it's just not easy. So I would recommend making something more fun, because you're not going to give up on it. So this is an example of basic art, a painting from a couple years back. So that's an acrylic painting. Here's an example of some oil paintings that Julia did in Painting 2 last year. So the oils are a lot more vibrant, but then you can get a lot more softer undertones in them too. Okay, so that easel over there on the far right side, that's all oil paint, so don't sneeze those ever, because if you touch them, they're not dry and you're going to get oils all over you. So that's an example of oil. Now those examples are all on canvas, on stretched canvas made. The other things that we like to paint on are canvas boards. Okay, here's another thing you can paint on. This is watercolor on canvas board. I personally like canvas boards sometimes because the nice thing about canvas is when you paint on them, they actually give. It's not a hard surface. So that give allows the brush to work differently. When you paint on a hard surface with the brush, it's a lot different. You guys will know as you keep painting and trying some different stuff. It feels different and it gives different and it holds the color a lot different. So this is canvas board. When I'm going out and about or need a quick painting and don't want to have to lug around a big canvas, I will take canvas board. They come in all different sizes too, like huge, you can get huge canvas boards, and I really like them. Painting 1, we will do canvas boards. So painting basic art, we do the stretch canvas. Painting 1, we start to explore more mediums. Another thing that's similar to canvas board that we used to paint on is masonite. It's masonite with wood. So this is something I did in college. You guys can do something this small. This is 8 by 10. But this would still take you 2 to 3 weeks to do, and that's okay. It's some character off something that I can't remember. It was some job thing way back in the day. But, so this is masonite. The thing about masonite is you do see more of the board below it and the gesso. This canvas board, it looks more like a canvas, like the woven part of the canvas. This looks like wood. Okay, so those are 2 harder surfaces. The thing that Painting 2 has been working on, we've been using canvas paper. It comes in something that looks a lot like a sketchbook, but it's actually, it's thicker. It doesn't, you know how like you guys have been painting on the 80-weight paper? This doesn't curl with the paint, but it's neat because it still has the texture, it's still gessoed, and it looks just like canvas. So you will, if you want to come to look at this later, it's kind of fun, it's what we do in Painting 2. I mean, you guys are always more than welcome to go buy your own stuff. Maybe this summer, if you're looking for stuff to do. Watercolor paper. The watercolor paper, it's kind of funny because if kids don't know it's watercolor paper, they think it's poster board paper because it's that thick. It's more expensive, and that's why the watercolor and painting supplies are all over here now, because kids used to come in and grab watercolor paper thinking, and then do like a sign for basketball, and there was $5 down the drain, because this stuff's not cheap. But watercolor paper is really neat. You can actually, one of my Painting 2 kids is starting to paint on it. Hopefully at the end of the year, if we get time, some of the stuff we don't get to, like watercolors and a couple other different mediums we didn't get to, you might get a chance to try them out for like a week while we're at the end of the year. And so this is, so a big sheet. If you're going to go buy this in the store, it's about $5 for a big sheet of this, because it's a heavier weight stuff. You can get different weights of watercolor papers. Okay, so those are your basic supplies of that. Now, the fun stuff. Well, stuff that's more developed now because they didn't have it, honestly, when I was even in college. So I talked about acrylics, oils, the basic ones that have been around forever. So what's neat is they started to manufacture actually, like, they're called watercolor pencils. These are really fun. They look like colored pencils when you draw with them, but you just take a paintbrush with water and literally go in and you start adding color into it. So when I work with little kids in art, kids love to paint. I love to paint because I think it's really relaxing because of the whole motion and the softness of the brush. I don't know, I think it's really, I can be stressed out and try to paint and I feel in a better mood after I'm done painting. So if little kids, like 6-year-olds, sometimes they want to paint with me, and I don't give them the acrylic paints, what I'll do is I'll get out my watercolor pencils and I'll let them use that because they just want to use this. these are cool. You just add water into them. There's examples on the back, and they look like that. Another thing, their Inktense, another one that's more not as transparent as watercolor pencils or Inktense pencils. At the end of school year, hopefully I can let you guys try all this stuff out. But I have my own of these. It's a set of 24. Yes, they're expensive up front, like 40 or 50 bucks, but I've done probably 10 or 15 paintings and not even used half of the sticks. Like, that's what's cool. Yeah, it's a lot of cost up front, but mine literally might be down to there. I don't even think I have many down to there. They last a lot longer. And people think they're acrylic paintings. They're like, what? That was, you know, so it's kind of neat. They do get more of a coloring. If you want to look at what they look like, here's an example of the different mediums up there. So, those are the mediums. Here's something fun you can think about if you want to do. In paints, you can add different, like I said, acrylics are going to come out pretty flat, okay? There is a medium, and it's what Morgan's going to do. It's called the glazing medium. So instead of having a flat color, you can actually make it look shiny, okay? There are mediums you can add into it that make it have texture. Like, you can touch these, and it's actually paint sticking up. So there's gel mediums that have texture that you can put into them to make them have a texture too. I opened this up to basic art last year. Not many kids did it, but it's kind of fun if you want to try them out. And then, like, say you're painting, a kid last year painted a dragon, okay? There are scales. You know how their scales look like they have that shimmery effect to it? There's an iridescent medium you can add into your paint too that will give you that look. So there's stuff you can add into your paints that make them not so flat and boring. Okay, so that's a possibility. Okay, this is where I want to show you 2 more examples of just some stuff that Ms. D has allowed kids to do. I wasn't ever taught this in college, but they're kind of fun. And if you continue, like, these guys are, this is actually Morgan's that I'm going to show you. So, I thought it would be fun to take an ungessoed canvas, so it's not primed with the white stuff, and I personally have taken watercolors and just started painting. It's called a staining technique, which you can do, except what the gesso does is it makes your canvas last longer because it's like primed. This can eventually eat away and it'll fade just because it's not on, you know, like a primed wall. Paint will last longer. So this is watercolor on unprimed canvas. And so if you keep taking art classes, you can actually just paint on something not primed. So this is watercolor and unprimed. And then Brianna really likes watercolor paints, but she likes the canvases. So she took, this is watercolor paints on canvas, okay, not the paper. The reason they say not to really do this is because it's watercolor. When it dries, it gets choppy. So if I have to go like this, it's going to start really coming off on my hands. Obviously, Brianna's going to hang it up on a wall. No one's really going to be touching it. Yeah, it might not last 100, 200 years, but you can get this effect if you water down your acrylics a little bit too. Okay, so those are a couple fun things. If you keep taking painting classes, you get opportunities to try out some different ways of mediums. Okay, so what you guys got to think about is what am I going to paint and what size am I going to paint it. The thing with basic art is kids will want to give up 2 weeks into the project because they start with way too large a canvas. They don't realize, oh, this actually takes a lot of work to get something done. So you've got to have all of your planning done before you just start going at something and trying to make it work. Oops, that's a fish. So 2 years ago, like, I like to paint when you guys are painting just because it helps students to see how much time it actually does take to put into it. This painting, this is the first coat of paint I did on it. I had a sheet of 5 reference pictures of a horse's head. I didn't just print off one picture because for that eye, eventually you'll see the eye. If I had one picture of a horse and there's no detail on the eye, how am I going to paint that eye? So you have to get a reference. If it's not like a landscape or a photo like that, you need different close-ups of more of the detailed stuff. So you got to find a picture and don't print 5 separate pictures. Put them all onto one sheet. Okay, it'll make your life a lot easier because you'll probably lose that one sheet. So from my reference picture, I started blocking this in. Okay, it's not going to look like you'll see the finished project on the first coat of paint. Okay? Kids will want to stop after 1 week because they don't think it looks good. You gotta realize, I've been on my grandparents, I've only spent 8 hours on this, which I still probably got about 20 to go. My grandpa, this is about the 3rd coat of paint on him. I'm still trying to figure out my lights and darks. My grandma, it's about, I still got 1 more coat on top of this to do. Because I start figuring out my details, I put my details in, and then I go in and refine those details. So it takes a little bit of work. So if you look at this size, this takes a long time. And I'm pretty advanced. So think about what size you're going to do. This horse painting is the same size as my lion. Okay? You have to, I don't want these to look like some 5-year-old did. Okay? So if it's going to take you something smaller to actually make it look like a high school kid did it and you know what you're doing and it looks real, then take your time. So this is blocking in your colors, which you'll be doing after spring break, okay? The next step I did is I started, sorry, this is actually the 4th step. I didn't take 1 of the 2nd and 3rd. This on the left side, I had so many kids come into me that day and say, oh, it looks like you're done. After the 2nd or 3rd coat. They thought it was done because they're like, well, that looks really good. But they didn't, you got to think past that. So there's always good, better, best. Yeah, I could have stopped at this and it looks good. That's great. But realize paint, I love to paint, so I will push you guys to get more of the detailed stuff on top. So this is about the 4th coat of paint where it started to actually look more like the horse with lights and darks. And that's the 2nd, this is kind of where my grandma's at right now. It's like almost done. And then that's the finished project. Okay, so it takes time, and you got to work on each specific area. I can bring in other paintings I've done, like of landscape and stuff, that will help you understand how you have to block something in. Okay. What else did I need to talk about? Oh, so the stretcher bars are up here. By Friday, you will have your color charts front and back completed. Tomorrow, we're going to take 2 minutes. I'm going to show you 10 techniques. So realize we got over 100 canvases being built right now. You guys aren't going to get them all done in 1 day. Okay, so it kind of works better if you partner up with someone because you got to stretch and build them. Okay. So there's 7 different sizes of stretcher bars. The biggest it can be is 18 by 24 because if it's anything bigger than 24, it will, when you pull the canvas, it'll start to warp. Okay. So if you don't know what size you want to do, then start coming up here. And put sizes together and play around with it. You can make them square, you can make them rectangle, you can make them small 8 by 10. So, you're going to think about that. When you have it to this point, okay, you go into the doorway. Because these have to be square. Just because they are straight against each other does not mean it's square. So you have to square them in the doorway and make it so it's a perfect square. Okay, and then you take a staple gun and you staple it here, but you're going to pull those staples out. The reason you do that is because when you have the canvas on it, you don't want it to go like that when you pull it. You know what I'm saying? Like you're going to make it so it doesn't move, but you will pull those out. To stretch the canvas, I'll actually work table by table because it'll just work easier like that. I don't want anyone opening up, I've had like 4 or 5 staple guns ruined by kids trying to load the staple guns. Don't do that. I will put the staples in for you because I don't want them getting busted because we don't have that much. Okay, questions. So what you guys need to do is come up with your idea. You have to have everything written down. If you don't have this done before break, you will not get this completed when you come back from break. If you're trying that week after break to do everything you're supposed to do this week, you might have homework and art this week, that means. You might actually have to think about this outside of your 45 minutes a day in here. And bring in pictures and think about things, okay? If you're doing a logo, I don't just want the word Nike on a black background. That does not work. You have to make it way more creative. You have to actually think about the background, think about how to make it look 3D and make it look real. You can do words, it doesn't have to be realistic. It can be abstract. You're not just going to paint a canvas red and say it's the next Picasso and be done with it. Yes?
Are you going to teach us to like fur and stuff? Like
we do that in painting too, textures.
Okay.
Or actually, sorry, painting 1 goes more into textures, but I can help, I got handouts on it, yes.
Okay.
So if you need help with more of the textures, I will help you guys. That's something we cover a lot more in paintings 1 and 2 because it's just too much to cover in this short amount of time I have you guys. But yes, I can help you guys. Because that's what this is all. This is what we did in my advanced class. It's got all the textures on it, like how I paint clouds, water, rocks, and stuff. So we have all that. Other questions? So what you guys need to do, I don't know how much time's left, start coming up with your idea. And then tomorrow, we're going to go for it.
Good.